Harthen, I have news. I've discovered the badger's secret.
Excellent. Do tell.
These halls are riddled with hidden passages. I followed one of their scouts back from that enormous reservoir. I lost him when he opened a hidden door and disappeared inside. They're very inconspicuous, but now that I know what I'm looking for, I spotted 3 more on the way back. Where we must wind through this network of tunnels, they pass straight through the walls.
That explains how we cannot outpace them.
Well done, Danae. Only, I'm not sure how to operate them.
Well, take us to one. I'm sure we can figure it out. We have the cordial of clear sight and the bottle of burrowing if we need to get inside of one to have a good look around. Let us go at once.
Oh, that's not good. Those slippery elves have found their way into the secret passages.
Oh, bother. It was only a matter of time. Where are they headed?
They've bypassed the rubble blocking the great stair. They're headed down.
Gather your gear, lads. We have to hope we can catch up while they're snooping around. Several days later. No elves, but the magic is acting awfully strange down here.
What's that glow in the distance?
What is that glow?
That may be our goal. The weave seems drawn to it. Let us investigate. Welcome back to the Ashen Stone channel for the 4th in this series of Frostgrave battle reports. Let's catch up with the dwarves quickly. They leveled up once off the last game, learning the leap spell from the grimoire they found, and hiring the Templar Loran to support their cause. The elves leveled up 3 times, giving themselves +1 fight, and improving their transpose and enchant weapon spells. Danae the thief returns, recovered from his injuries, and Cardvadir, the elf at arms, is paid up front to leave camp. The table is set. In addition to the treasure, both sides will be wanting to examine the glowing crystal column in the centre of the room. Doing so will net a wizard or apprentice experience points, and each turn the crystals will cause the magic to wax or wane. Rolling high, the dwarves set up on the close right corner, the elves on the close left. Harthen successfully cast Familiar as he approaches the cavern, increasing his hit points to a more appropriate level,
Utilis Daemonium.
as does Nastriel. Initiative turn 1, let's go. The magic wanes as Dolmir begins to call a gathering of crows, strands of the weave drawing towards the centre of the cavern. But Dolmir skillfully siphons the power he needs. Umbral shapes detach from shadowy corners, cawing loudly as they swoop around the wizard, coalescing into an indistinctly shimmering orb. With a satisfied nod, Dolmir shuffles forward to look out onto the cavern beyond. Mordrim stalks forward, grey cloak shrouding his movements, to take up position behind a decrepit barricade. He knocks an arrow and peers out through the gloom, searching for danger. Dolmir's construct stomps forward with the sound of grinding stone, cracked and chipped, but largely restored after its run-in with one of its larger counterparts. Dispatched as meagre aid by Baradok King, Loran, the heavily armed and armoured linebreaker, lumbers onwards. Hefting his large flanged mace, he scans the path ahead through the eye slits of his richly decorated warhelm. Harthen moves up around the stalagmites, his robe swishing quietly around his long legs. With his eyes on the glowing crystal column before him, he draws on the weave as it surges past him. He grasps enough to form a wizard's eye on the face of the column, peering back to spot the advance of the dwarves.
The dwarves are here. Then let us get in and out swiftly.
Rython dashes forward, moving past the stalagmites and around the rocky hillock, scarred shield held high to avoid scraping it along the stones. Habador follows in his footsteps, but spotting movement down the passage ahead, ducks off to the right. Drawing an arrow from the quiver at his hip, he swiftly nocks, steps out, and releases a hasty shot down the passage at the movement in the shadows. The missile streaks down the passageway, the flashing movement catching Mordrum's searching eye, and he ducks at the last moment, the arrow plucking at the hood of his cloak.
Cock! We've found those bloody pointy-eared pricks again.
Thindea dashes up behind Rhython, fitting his tall helm in place as he goes, and taking cover along the walls of the cavern.
They are dogged in their pursuit.
Thraud creeps forward over the rising cave floor, gazing out from under his dark hood into the murkiness ahead, and spotting something of interest beyond the stalagmites across the way. He calls back to Torrig.
Oi, lad, I see something ahead. Give me a measure of that new spell you've been practicing.
Torrig shuffles forward. He nervously flips through his spellbook to the latest page.
If you're sure, Thraud. The weave's a wee bit slippery here. Just do it, lad. What could go wrong? With magic? Oh dear. Oh well, here you go. Balkith Aknan!
Energies rise, swirling around Thraud, wreathing his legs in a spiral of power. And with an effortless hop, Thraud is launched high into the air to sail across the cavern, landing beyond the distant stalagmites, the twisting energies cushioning his fall before fading away into the earth.
Oh, I feel ill. Oh, look, coin for me, and a stick to keep the wizard happy. Worth it.
Crake scrabbles up past Torrig, dark clothes fluttering, a bit of a limp remaining from the last excursion. Thin Air puffs up after him, mail shirt rattling as he jogs past Torrig. Sprinting forward like the wind, Danae races up along the defile on the elves' left, making for the glint of coin in the distance. Caravadir, the second elf at arms of the company, springs up onto the high ground, making for the passage between the cavern wall and the stalagmites. Tithian dashes up beside him, his glinting mail covered by surcoat and cloak, taking position against the stalagmites and knocking an arrow as he watches for threats. Nastriel gathers the weave for a beauty spell,
Pull, trit, Udo.
but once again she botches the glamour. The weave torn from her grasp as it's drawn deeper into the cavern, the forceful tearing ripping at her mind. Blinking back tears, she stumbles forward, following up with the rest of the group in a bit of a daze. Amram and Turvak move up along the tracks behind Dolmir and Loran, axes held low to their sides.
That glow's not ominous at all, is it?
Gaderian and Edenor move up on either side of Nastriel, Gaderian's lantern providing a low level of illumination, and Edenor with a healing elixir at hand. That's turn 1. The dwarves push up in the centre with the sneak Thraud catapulted into the distance, and the elves are casting a wider net with Danae dashing on up ahead. Initiative on turn 2 is taken by the elves, and the magic continues to be on the wane. Knocking another arrow, Habador takes a moment of calm to centre himself before drawing and releasing another shot towards Mordrum as he peeks up from behind the barricade. The arrow streaks down the passage, striking Mordrum high on the left shoulder and somersaulting to the ground behind him, defeated by his hidden mail shirt. Rhython rushes forward, leaping up onto the terrace before the glowing column, his eyes flitting between the glinting energies swirling among the crystals ahead and the battered chest before them. Noting Habador's swift shots, Harthan elects to aid the archer and gathers from the weave. Though the magic seek to be drawn elsewhere, Harthan taps into his staff of power and iron resolve to expertly redirect them according to his will, enchanting Habador's bow to shoot true. Following the rushing strands of the weave, he moves further into the cavern, approaching the central pillar. Oblivious to the invisible forces moving around him, Thindea moves up around Harthan, eyeing the pulsing crystals warily, ready to cover Rhython if he needs aid.
Get that chest back quickly, Rhython. I mislike those crystals.
As the elven arrow skips off his shoulder, Mordrum rises over the barricade, drawing his own bow back to his chest. He releases the string, sending a reply back down the corridor towards Habador, who ducks back around the cavern wall. The dwarven arrow skips off the roughly carved stone, disappearing into the distance as Mordrim ducks down again. Stomping forward, the medium construct leaps down to the lower ground with a crash, rumbling up towards the column and the elves gathered there. Loran follows on the construct's heels, lobstered plates clattering as he jogs forward on the left side of the stalagmites. Dolmir shuffles up as well, sliding down the slope to end up behind the first of the stalagmites, getting a better look at the distant glowing crystals.
Torrig, lad! Bring me that tome on geodes by Medi Threndelson! Quickly now!
Gathering the weave, he casts Leap on Loran, though something disturbs his focus, the draining magic slipping from his grasp, searing his mind as they are pulled away.
Wait, what is that?
It begins as an echo, quickly building to an ominous thunder, beating in the depths. Boom, boom, ba-boom. The squeal of rusted hinges echoes across the cavern, as hidden in the distant gloom, the crudely fortified gates walling off the far end of the cavern creak open, and out they come. Orcs.
Here, who's pinching my magic rocks?
Arbolg the Beastmaster strides forth, clad in robes of hide and fur, gnarled staff festooned with fetishes and charms. He surges up the knoll before the gates, his sunken, piggy eyes surveying the nooks and crannies of the cavern, and falling upon the stooping figure of Thraud as he's scooping scattered coin together.
Oi, hands off them shiny bits, they're mine.
Tearing power from the weave, he thrusts his staff in the dwarf's direction, a sickly green dart bursting forth to whiz across the space between them, striking Thraud in the abdomen. Thraud is rocked by the blast. He falls to hands and knees, retching violently, his skin instantly becoming clammy, his vision swimming, and he shakes with sudden chills. Following on Arbolg's heels, Ugdug the Linebreaker rushes out, heading off in the direction of Arbolg's sickly blast. Saglut strolls forth, hands beating a slow rhythm on his rawhide drum. And Urko, Arbolg's bear companion, lumbers to his right, bellowing a terrifying roar.
What was that?
Torrig works his way down the passage towards Dolmir,
On the way,
awkwardly
Archivist.
reaching into the backpack slung over his shoulders as he goes.
Oh,
He exclaims as he spots the elves moving across behind the stalagmites ahead, and quickly changes tack. He scoops a stone up off the floor, channeling the weave into a grenade spell, but distracted and unprepared for the waning magic, the spell backfires and the magic cracks behind his eyes, making his vision swim for a moment. Nastriel turns to Tethian as she pulls on the weave, hauling the magic into line. The waning powers fight her every step of the way, but she successfully manages to temporarily enchant Tethian's bow, enhancing the deadly archer further. She then makes her way around the left-hand side of the cavern wall. Gadarian rushes up past Danaea, taking up a position to support the elf thief in recovering the treasure.
I'd be quick about it, Danaea. I don't fancy going toe-to-toe with a cave bear.
Crake slinks through the cavern, following the wall on his left, and spots a broken clay vessel on the floor, a glint of gold spilling out in the low light. He saunters over and quickly gathers up the scattered coin into the largest pottery shard.
Oh, that's a pretty stone.
Thraud continues to sweat and shiver. He gathers his baggy tunic about himself before slowly and deliberately picking up the coin and staff at his feet, balancing them precariously in his arms. Finir follows up on Crake's heels, jogging up after the nimble fellow. Stopping next to a row of stalagmites, he scans the gloom, seeking the source of the booming and roars.
Orcs! We've got orcs!
Turvac and Amram dash forward down the tracks, leaping to the lower ground and moving up past Dolmir, ready to get stuck in.
Orcs! Barstens!
Danaea dashes up to the abandoned campfire, sliding to a stop and snatching up an old satchel hidden among the rocks to the jangle of coin. He swiftly glances around, making note of his situation.
Not just a bear. but orcs as well.
Gaze drawn by Urko's mighty bellow, Tithian's eyes widen at the sight of the massive bear rising up on its hind legs. Taking his chance, he looses an arrow at the enormous beast. It sweeps across the cavern, striking the bear in the chest and disappearing within, fletchings and all. Urko lets out a ragged bellow of pain and rage, dropping back to all fours.
I think I just made it angry.
Caravadir makes his way forward between the stalagmites and the wall, spying another pouch of spilled coin. Taking a moment to gather it up, he holds the heavy purse behind his shield, keeping a wary eye on the dangers ahead. Rython awkwardly hefts the chest at his feet, his battered shield slung over his back, and begins to make his way to safety. Passing by Thendar, he calls out,
It should probably be you carrying this, Thendar. My shield has better uses.
Thendar moves up to cover Rython's retreat, seeing no need to engage just yet.
Worry not, Rython. Let me be your shield.
And Edenor moves up next to Harthan, ready if he's needed. That's turn 2. The forces of the dwarves and the elves are converging on the crystal column. The wings on the flanks have ventured far, grabbing hold of distant treasures, but this new foe is sure to complicate matters. Initiative on turn 3 will go to the elves, followed by the orcs, and then finally the dwarves. That seems somewhat appropriate, and the magic strengthens. It enters the waxing part of its cycle. Peering through his wizard's eye, Harthan seeks to shift the odds into the elves' favour, casting Furious Quill on the medium construct.
Distrahens Penna! Oh,
But the
bother.
sudden strengthening of the weave catches him unaware, and he fumbles the spell. Quietly berating himself, he moves closer towards the column. Tithian sends another shaft streaking across the cavern, striking Urko the bear in the shoulder at the base of the neck. Urko releases another bellow of pain, the arrow remaining proud, embedded in bone. Wounded and furious, Urko staggers out from behind the stalagmites. Driven mad by the pain caused by Tithian's arrows, he haggardly stumbles towards Danae in the open. Arbolg's attention is drawn to the bellowing cries of his animal companion, and his eye shifts to the right, alighting on the shadowy form of Danae.
Who's that then? I turn here, Sataos!
With a violent call, he tears more power from the weave, thrusting his staff and launching a second sickly dart, this time towards the elf thief. But ready for the danger, Danae easily ducks aside, and the putrid missile splatters across the ground behind him. Ugdug the Linebreaker charges forward, leaping up onto the higher ground, two-handed axe poised to strike the ailing Thraud.
What's this? The runt of the litter?
Saglut the Bard continues to pound out a steady rhythm on his drum, marching forward and calling more orcs to the fray. Hunkered down behind his barricade, Mordrum spots Thendar blocking the advance to his right. Arrow knocked, he rises, releasing, and the arrow shoots across the cavern, striking the elf in the belly. Thendar drops with a cry of pain, too badly wounded to contribute further to the fight. With the string still vibrating, Mordrum vaults over the barricade and slides down the slope to the low ground, taking cover behind the cavern wall and denying Habador a dwarven target. Loran lumbers up past the medium construct, rushing forward towards Rython and Harthan. Though weighed down by his heavy armour, he's unable to close the distance. Turvak squeezes his way through the stalagmites, clambering awkwardly through the limestone spires, and climbs up onto the plinth by the crystal column.
You lot again? These mountains belong to the dwarves.
Dolmir shuffles down the corridor, stooping stiffly to snatch up a stone as he goes. He prepares to enchant it to explode, but notes Thraud's precarious position off to his right. He quickly changes his mind, redirecting threads of the weave to encircle Thraud's shaking limbs.
Bolkith Agnan!
Feeling the familiar springiness in his legs, Thraud leaps into the air, sailing out from under Ugdug's descending axe and over the stalagmites to safety.
Oh, now I've really done it.
Nearing the front lines and seemingly ever under assault, Nastriel calls on the weave, passing her left hand over her own arming sword and enchanting it to enhance her already quite reasonable skill. With a satisfied nod, she approaches the crystal column, its mysteries in need of unravelling. Weighed down under his awkwardly held loot, Carvadir makes his way back towards Tethian, moving to safety. As he lands heavily off to his right, Torrig notes Thraud's poor health.
You look a little rough, Thraud. Here, let me help.
He casts a healing spell on the wounded and poisoned dwarf,
Habsut.
but despite the
bother.
waxing of magical energies, he fumbles the spell and the backlash pulses through his mind. Vision swimming, he jumps down a level and continues to approach in response to his master's call.
Come in, Archivist.
Danae turns to Gadarian.
Don't worry about me. Get yourself out. Harthen supplied me with an exit strategy.
Hauling his claimed satchel to safety in one hand, he rummages through his pouch in the other, withdrawing a stoppered vial of swirling silver liquid. Pulling down his mask with a finger, he clears the cork with his teeth, downing the glimmering potion, before he disappears in a flash, teleporting to reappear where the elves first entered the cavern.
That makes things far easier.
Rython swings the heavy chest out, dumping it to the ground behind the thin elven line.
Does someone with a spare hand want to take that?
He calls, shrugging his scorched shield off his shoulder and redrawing his sword. He turns to face the approaching dwarves, advancing on Loran, eyeing the Templar's armour for weaknesses. Gadarian dashes away from the wounded bear, back around the stalagmites and towards the grouped elves in the centre. He stands over the heavy chest,
I'll take it.
hooking his land into his belt and somewhat awkwardly trying to find a place for his sword. Edenor moves up closer to the action, healing elixirs ready.
Got another one of those potions, Harthen? Alas, I do not. Edenor? Unfortunately, there was only the one.
Habador leaps up onto the higher ground, knocking an arrow as he goes, and drawing it back to his ear, looses it towards Turvak. With Rython moving up across his target, Habador spoils the shot at the last moment, sending the arrow off to clatter against the rocky column.
Oh, I'd never hear the end of it.
Answering the call of the drum, more orcs surge forth from their encampment. Uzol, the captain, leads Goldig, the infantry orc, and Rofdir, the thug, out of the gate and into the centre of the cavern.
These are our caves. Kill them all.
With things quickly spiralling out of control, Dolmir sends the medium construct off to the right to block the orcs' advance.
I must inspect those crystals.
Crake cups the precariously piled coin within the broken urn and shuffles back to the exit as quick as he can without dropping anything.
Best I be gone.
Amram squeezes between the cavern wall and the stalagmites, hefting his axe, and he also moves in line to hold the right flank. Thynia moves back to help guard the sneak's escape as they shift back towards the exit.
You're looking a little green there, Thraud. You need a hand? I've got it. One step at a time.
That brings a close to turn 3 and things are getting chaotic. The archers on both sides have been plying a pretty good trade while the clash heats up in the centre. Meanwhile, the orcs pour forth out of their encampment, sure to throw a spanner in the works, though the elves and dwarves are well on the way to securing 2 treasures each. Initiative on turn 4 goes dwarves, orcs, elves, and once more the magical weave wanes, its power diminishing. Dolmir shuffles forward, clambering up onto the higher ground, and with Turvak to guard him, he begins to inspect the glowing crystals.
Oh, most curious. Truly fascinating.
He breaks off one of the gleaming formations, stowing it in his pouch to be more thoroughly examined in a safer location. Mordrim moves up towards the fray, another arrow fitted to his string, and finding Gadarian standing in the open, looses towards the rogue. Attention on the chest before him, Guderian is caught unawares, the broadhead arrow ripping through his neck and sailing off into the distance. Dark blood flows freely down Guderian's shoulder and chest, and he sinks to the ground, hands feebly trying to hold back the flow. But it's no use, and he collapses to the floor, sprawled out in the spreading pool of his own lifeblood. Turvac rushes Rython, already engaged with Loran, hacking out with a mighty chop from on high with his great axe. Rython weaves aside, redirecting the axe head with his shield before flicking out a cut of his own towards the dwarf's face. Turvac shifts his grip on the haft, easily blocking the cut, and warily prepares to strike again. His foe distracted, Loran winds up his heavy mace for a brutal strike, but Rython is unnaturally quick. The elf spins back, slamming his shield forward to cut off the strike, halting it before Loran can build up any momentum. Right hand high, he stabs down over the top of his shield, the point finding a gap behind the dwarf's gauntlet and cutting deep into the inside of Loran's wrist. Roaring in pain, Loran stumbles back, assisted by a shove from Rython, and no longer able to wield his weapons, he's forced to retire from the field. Rofdur the orc thug charges towards the medium construct, bellowing and brandishing his scimitar, ready for the fight.
Fight me, Rockman.
Turning again, Arbolg blasts another poison dart out into the cavern,
More stunts.
this time aimed at Amram.
I turn here, shut toes.
Eye forward, Amram ducks aside with ease, and the sickly green bolt splatters across the cavern floor behind him. Goldig follows in the wake of the poison dart, rushing the infantry dwarf, wicked polearm held ready to strike.
Been a while since I had a fresh stunt.
And Saglet moves up behind him, banging his drum and driving the orcs onwards. Gripping the weave, Harthen enchants Rython's sword, further enhancing the elf at arms skill, though the waning magic sear his mind as he forces them to comply. Blinking through the pain, he advances on Turvac, his own sword held in a high guard. As Turvac's eyes shift to take in this new threat, Rython strikes, quick as a snake. He thrusts forward with his arming sword, and the dwarf is slow to react. A subtle shift, and the enchanted point catches Turvac under the collarbone rather than in the throat, yet still the ensorcelled blade penetrates his mail shirt, splitting the iron links and cutting deep into his shoulder. Wincing in pain, he dives aside as Rython unleashes a follow-up cut, rolling to safety off the edge of the plinth, unable to continue the fight. Another foe dealt with, Rython advances on the elderly archivist Dolmir.
We meet again, dwarf. This time absent your exploding rocks.
Ha! I'm in danger!
Spotting the elf's advance and Dolmir's precarious position, Torrig grasps at the shifting strands of the weave, tearing them from the current that flows towards the pillar. They rack his mind as he willfully redirects them, wrapping Dolmir's legs in spiralling energies. Dolmir leaps to safety, sailing out from underneath Rython's deadly blade to nimbly land back at the wagon tracks.
Oh, good lad!
Wiping blood from his nose, Torrig backs up down the corridor, away from the column, the elves and orcs too much of a threat for the careful apprentice. Nastriel leaps up onto the plinth and approaches the crystal column, taking a moment for a quick study before she too breaks off a chunk for later examination.
Harthen, this may be it.
The dwarf's medium construct punches out at Rofdur, but the orc thug slips aside, hammering down with a two-handed chop of his scimitar. A resounding clang echoes out through the cavern, and a chip of stone cracks off the construct. But the rocky creature barely notices, and the two continue their duel. Amram steps into the approaching orc Goldig, coming inside the reach of his polearm, and delivers a mighty upward blow. His axe crumples the orc's heavy coat and mail, cracking ribs as it drives into his torso, leaving Goldig wounded and struggling to breathe.
Not so fresh as that, stinker.
Crake and Throud continue to drag their treasures off to safety, Crake with relative ease, while Throud struggles with his wounds and the poison that still rocks his body. Thynia backs away with them, warily eyeing the orcs ahead as he protects the sneak's withdrawal. Frustrated by the dwarves' retreat, Ugdug bellows with rage and turns to charge towards Amram. Leaping into the air as he approaches, he drives downwards with his great axe, Amram raising his own to meet him. The orc's axe crashes into Amram's haft, driving through the dwarf's block to glance off his helmet and smash into the reinforcing plate over Amram's shoulder. The blow throws the dwarf to the ground, and he scrabbles painfully back to his feet,
Weak.
alive, but in a bad place.
Of course it would take 2 of you.
Urko the bear continues to lumber forward in a rage, slowed by his injuries. Uzol, the orcish captain, swings around the column to his right, and spotting Nastriel, leaps forward to attack.
Hello, rabbit.
The orcish drums call forth yet more savage creatures. Lorzo the thug moving up the centre, and Orgash and Ogor the thieves sprinting off to their right, daggers clutched and keen for blood. Danae dashes to safety, successfully securing the treasure he uncovered. Swiftly knocking, Tethian releases another arrow towards Urko, striking the bear, but it buries itself within the thick hide of the beast, causing no real harm.
How many more will it take?
Habador sprints up towards the action, fitting an arrow to his string as he goes, and skidding to a stop, looses his own hasty shot towards the bear. His arrow strikes true, sinking into Urko's massive shoulder, and the great beast slumps to the ground, breathing heavily, too wounded to carry on.
Look at that, Tethian. 1 shot. Oh, you can be such a bore, Habador.
It's teamwork that makes these things possible.
Oh, just take your treasure and go, Carfadir.
Caravadir continues to haul his loot to safety, and Edenor continues to edge up, ready to provide support where needed, but keeping himself out of harm's way. That's the end of turn 4. The elves have secured 1 treasure with a second on the way, and the dwarves are close to having 2 of their own. Through dreadful swordwork and the distraction provided by the orcs, the elves have managed to take control of the central column, while the dwarves kindly hold the flank for them. Initiative on turn 5 goes to the elves, followed by the orcs, then the dwarves, and the magic continues to wane. Rython swings around Nastriel and engages the orc captain, Uzol, snapping out with his spellbound sword. Uzol, however, is a mighty foe, and he bashes the blade away with his shield before sweeping out with his enormous scimitar and a heavy strike of his own. Rython is forced to duck out of the way, slipping down off the higher ground to land safely out of reach on the cavern floor. Entranced by the glowing geode ahead, Harthon leaps up beside Nastriel and peers into the luminous maw.
It's some kind of anchor. A stitch, perhaps, tethering the weave to this location. But it's frayed and splitting.
Pumping his staff over his head in both hands,
Stone man.
Arbolg intones a curse upon the dwarf's medium construct,
Auga ishi.
and the dark magic seeps into its form. Dashing around the column, Lorzo spots Rython as he slides down to the lower ground, and bellowing a war cry, charges at the elf at arms.
I'll split you in half.
Dolmir takes note of the situation as the dwarves have been driven back, and while desperate, he spots opportunity in the chaos. He pulls firmly on the weave, drawing power towards himself, though it rebels every step of the way. The power courses through the elderly dwarf, searing his mind, his limbs, his digits. But through the pain, he maintains control, successfully casting a telekinesis spell. The heavy chest previously shifted behind the elf lines, drags across the ground, lifting unsteadily into the air to float across the cavern, thumping to the ground behind Mordrim. Breathing raggedly and hanging heavily off his staff for support, Dolmir awkwardly shuffles back down the tracks towards safety.
Oh, I think we're done here.
As Uzol fights off Rython, Nestriel takes advantage of his distraction and strikes out at the orc with her own enchanted weapon. But Uzol is more than up for the fight. He knocks her blade aside with his shield, pinning her arm to the rocky column, and roars loudly in her face, playing with the elf maid, relishing the struggle.
What's the matter, rabbit? Wolf got your paw.
Torug also spots an opportunity in the chaos. He clambers up onto the higher ground, scooping up a stone as he goes, and the weave fighting against his will, he enchants the stone to explode on impact. He hurls the enchanted stone across the cavern to land among the combatants gathered at the column. It detonates among them, pelting elf and orc alike. Yet somehow they all escape unharmed, with the exception of Harthan, who's lightly bruised by a single piece of shrapnel.
Ah, can't you see I'm busy?
Throud drags his loot up the slope in a daze, inching towards safety, and with the treasure all but secured, Thinir dashes towards the fight, coming to Amram's aid.
Hold on, Amram. I'm coming.
Caravadir hauls his loot to the edge of the cavern in safety, securing a second treasure for the elves. Tethian and Habador spot the approaching orc thieves creeping through the darkness of the cavern and loose in their direction. Tethian's shot slams into Orgash's thigh, sinking to the fletchings, and Orgash roars in pain, wounded but still in the fight. Habador has better luck, his arrow taking Ogor in the abdomen, and the orc collapses from the pain, taken out of the action.
Now you're just showing off.
Noting Harthan beginning to show some signs of wear, Edenor rushes to his side and administers his healing tonics, restoring the wizard's vitality.
Thank you, Edenor. Your coin is well earned.
Ignoring the wound he literally just sustained, Orgash dashes into the thick of the fight, approaching Rython from the side and splitting the elf's attention. Nastriel manages to slip her trapped arm free as Uzol unleashes a furious attack upon her, raining blows down on the apprentice. She manages to keep up, parrying and redirecting each blow and avoiding the captain's deadly scimitar. But with a guttural grunt, Uzol punches forward his shield, slamming the elf maid in the chest, and the breath is blown from her lungs, leaving her weak and gasping. Rofdur the thug continues to hack at the cursed medium construct, but its rocky form proves impervious to his aggressive assault, and he leaves himself open to catch a swinging stony fist to the jaw, knocking him back on his heels to stumble away from the construct, vision swimming and struggling to remain on his feet. Goldig takes a step away from Amram before delivering an overhead thrust down on the wounded dwarf, but Amram proves ready for it, knocking the point aside with the head of his axe before delivering a fatal blow to the orc's shoulder, cleaving deep into the infantry orc's torso. Goldig drops to the ground dead, and swaying a little, Amram turns his attention towards Ugdug.
You're next, orc.
But Ugdug's attention is on Thinir, and he unleashes a devastating blow upon the approaching dwarf, crushing straight through Thinir's guard and striking him in the chest. Mail links fly as Thinir crashes to the stony floor of the cavern, his hauberk damaged, but not breached, the metal shirt saving his life at the cost of several broken ribs.
Feeble.
Shrieking and howling in a frenzy, Sagluk continues banging his drum, the rhythmic pounding driving the orcs on and strengthening their will. Crake hauls his valuables to safety, securing the first of the treasures for the dwarves. Feeling somewhat exposed, Mordrim leapfrogs the treasure chest as it comes to a stop beside him and hauls it into the air, ready to be carried away.
Oh, Torgrim's hairy arse, that's heavy.
Freed from its duel with the orcish thug, the dwarves' medium construct falls back towards home, standing guard over Mordrim's retreat. Amram lashes out at Ugdug in a rage at Thinir's fall, swinging wildly at the Orc Templar. But Ugdug is no novice, and slowed by his wounds, Amram's assault is easily turned aside. The Orc drives his axe towards Amram in a rising cut, catching the dwarf in the torso and throwing him into the air to crash heavily to the ground, where he groans softly in a daze, bruised but alive.
Ugdug is strongest.
The medium construct attempts to shrug off the effects of the curse, but the dark magic is strong and it continues to permeate its form. That's turn 5, and the centre of the board is a chaos of orcs and elves, though the dwarves are sneaking the central treasure out from under their noses. They've secured one with another well on the way, though the elves have managed to inspect the crystal column with both wizard and apprentice. Initiative on turn 6 goes to the elves, then the dwarves, then the orcs, and the magic continues to wane. Harthen spots Mordrim escaping with the treasure, and in an effort to thwart him, draws on the weave to cast Fool's Gold.
Stultus.
But with the orcs
Aurum.
pressing in and the weave pulling away, the magic slips from his grasp, feedback sparking behind his eyes, and he makes no great effort to contain it. With the crystals examined, he makes his escape, shifting around Edenor, but the dwarf's medium construct steps forward, blocking his retreat.
What? Out of my way.
Rython snaps out a cut as Orgash lunges, but the thief's wounded leg collapses under him, turning the elf at arm's deadly slash into a mere nick as the suddenly prone orc drops beneath the blade and scrambles back out of reach.
Orgash meant to do that.
Edenor moves to Harthen's side to protect the wizard as the construct assails him. He swings out with his staff, the wooden shaft bouncing off the construct's hardened form, and as the construct swings out in return, Edenor leaps back out of reach. Hanging heavily off his staff, Dolmir puts in a half-hearted attempt to help Mordrim escape, but still woozy from his last spell, he cannot muster the concentration required. With his enemies falling before him, Aurabolg enhances his allies, casting a strengthening spell on the Templar Ugdug, whose muscles bulge beneath his armour as he bellows in fury. Nastriel draws in a ragged breath and holds her sword forth in a hanging guard, but Uzol cares not. He sweeps her blade aside with his own and drives the edge of his shield into her once more. Nastriel collapses to the ground and rolls off the plinth, gasping for breath and dragging herself to safety, fear written across her features.
Flee from me, rabbit. I live for the hunt.
Thraud staggers towards home, treasure clutched tightly to his chest, making it off the board. Torig figures the poor performance of the last grenade must have been a fluke, and calls on the weave to enchant another. But distracted by the mass of enemies and feeling exposed and alone, he loses control of the magic and it bites him as it flees from his grasp. Habador looses towards Uzol, but the orc captain easily catches the arrow in his shield, and repositioning, Tethian releases a second arrow towards Orgash the thief, this one ricocheting off the orc's helm. Ears ringing and eyes unfocused, Orgash slumps to the ground, defeated. Hefting the weighty chest, Mordrim hauls it up onto the higher ground, scrambling up the slope behind it, and making his way down the tracks and back to camp. The medium construct feigns left and right, occupying Harthen and preventing his easy escape. Lorzo slashes out at Rython with his scimitar, but the elf easily intercepts the blade with his shield. With the orc open, he drives his crossguard into Lorzo's face, then delivers a downwards cut across the thug's torso. His crude scaled coat keeps the orc in one piece, but the blow to the head leaves him senseless on the floor. Rython, victorious once more. Seeking another spellcasting victim, Uzol charges at Harthen from behind, chopping out with a mighty roar.
Your turn.
Harthen spins at his approach, cutting out with his own sword in a parry. The crossguard catches the orc's stroke, turning it aside.
I don't think
But
so.
the heavy strike
Brute.
badly wrenches the elf's arm in the process. Muscles bulging, Ugdug sprints towards Edenor, bellowing loudly and lashing out with a mighty chop of his great axe. Edenor turns as he hears the orc's approach, spinning aside and causing the orc's axe to sweep past and crash into the floor, sending up a spray of stone chips. The apothecary swings out with his staff as he spins, striking the orc in the face with the sturdy stave and causing him to stumble back, roaring in surprise and rage. Rofter staggers forward after him, moving up to engage Edenor, but slowed by his wound, that's as far as he gets, as Saglut the Bard continues to beat his drum, urging the orcs on. And that's where we end turn 6. Both the elves and the dwarves choosing to withdraw, leaving the column in the hands of the orcs.
Let's go! We're done here. Fall back. Our foes' numbers are too many.
Flee, weaklings. This mountain belongs to the Deepmoor tribe.
I hope you have enjoyed the 4th episode in this campaign. The orcs definitely added a complication to the game, throwing the dwarves into chaos more so than the elves, but nevertheless, the dwarves did manage to sneak out the majority of the treasure, though their ranks have suffered. Thanks very much for watching, and a huge thank you to those supporting the show on Patreon. It is very much appreciated. We'll see you next time. Cheers!